Hi everyone, in this video I want to talk about June 2022 and some of the upcoming transits this month. One that is ongoing is transit of Mars through Aries, where it entered Aries on May 24, and it will actually stay in Aries through July 5th. So since Mars is actually strong in Aries, it rules this sign, and it symbolizes things like fire, heat, drought, also any sort of military activities, of course also weapons, sports, risky activities, and unfortunately also things like shootings, escalations of various events. And as you may already have seen in the news, unfortunately, right as Mars entered Aries and it conjuncted with Jupiter at the time, and Jupiter of course rules things like just expansion and also considerations of legal nature, that's when in the United States there was this really horrible shooting in Texas where 19 kids and a couple teachers have died. And things of that nature, unfortunately, are associated with Mars and Aries, and we will unfortunately see increased news, not necessarily about shootings, but just concerns about things that are related to guns, weapons, as well as droughts, fires, explosions, or dangerous, risky situations. So, and at the end of the month, we will also have Mars squaring Pluto, and that will occur from about the 28th of June through the 4th of July. And at that time, another sort of situation that may involve either escalating some sort of events that are dangerous, or if, say, there is like a person who's like a daredevil and they decide to jump, beat a record by jumping on a motorcycle over like a row of cars, or somebody decides to do something crazy like, walk on a rope that's tied between two tall buildings. That's not the best time for engaging in such activities. And specifically, Pluto currently is in the sign of Capricorn, and Capricorn rules things like governments, mountains, large corporations, leadership, and anything that's sort of at the high level. So with the Mars squaring Pluto at this time, this could bring, at the end of this month, it could bring things like anti-governmental protests, or like I said, if there's an accident that involves something that falls from a height. It could be literally maybe like there's a dictator and they're deposed and they, fall from their sort of position of power. Or it could be something literal where maybe there's like a major earthquake and things fall down to the ground, like large rocks, for example. It could also symbolize an airplane accident where, again, some sort of a, flying vehicle, airplane falls down and there's like a fire or explosion associated with that. So that's coming towards the end of the month, but as I mentioned, since both Mars and now also Jupiter will be in this sign of Aries through early July, the entire period may see increased focus on just things in the news, on like things that are dangerous, heated, just disagreements about something, increased focus on weapons, increased focus on droughts, a lack of maybe clean water in some areas. So definitely the time that kind of to stay alert and, make sure you don't, start fires, where there's a lot of like dry, vegetation around, etc. So let's see. But overall, aside from that, it's actually not a very bad month. Again, there are a few positive transits there as well, at least exciting ones. So for Jupiter in Aries, as just mentioned, Mars will stay in Aries through the early July, and Jupiter will actually stay in Aries for quite some time, but it will retrograde back to Pisces sometime in mid-October, and it will basically, at that time, we may see increased news about things like, oil and gas, perhaps increased concerns about flooding, or increased concerns about, like poisons or chemicals. And that will be again from mid-October until late December of 2022. So topics that maybe have been strongly kind of in the news earlier this year may come back. So if there is an expectation about maybe some spike of either COVID or some other infectious disease, could be really anything that spreads, especially through like damp, kind of wet areas. that is another time where this year where that can spike. Also, there could be concerns about high gas and oil prices, or concerns about either abundance or inability to get certain chemicals, or again, it could be just too much either of chemicals, or again, ships at the ports, etc. And that's coming again later in the fall. But for now, for this month, both Mars and Jupiter will be strong sort of in Aries, and definitely will probably contribute to higher than usual temperatures, and perhaps again droughts in certain areas. So this is the time to conserve water, because there definitely may be either some shortages or concerns about that. So some other transits, again, 28th through the 4th of July will be significant, because specifically, again, Pluto and Mars will be in the square, but also the 28th of June is going to be a new moon. So new moon typically brings increased focus on sort of stock market activities, higher than usual or lower than usual kind of drops or rallies, but that's globally. But at the same time, what I noticed already before, and I put that at my blog at tolstunka.com like months ago, that basically and I didn't expect every single country, but for two countries, Taiwan and China and Turkey, is where I saw increased sort of transits to those two charts, where things are indicative of either a major earthquake, such as, that those two countries had back in 1999, or some other problems where, again, there's just some sort of shakeup. And even though the peak of this activity may actually unfold sometime in November of this year, we can see increased news about, again, some problematic events or earthquakes or something maybe brewing kind of in the area, where maybe if there's like underwater volcano that's going to erupt perhaps later, that's where things may start kind of becoming more difficult, or there's like an increase of some unsettled energy. And again, if there's like a pre-shock, those are the times, end of June is when I would be paying attention to, because this might be a precursor to something that may be unfolding over the next few months, and something that the events late in June will tell us about what might be happening. And new moon is obviously also the time where some new things come sort of to life, new projects begin oftentimes, etc. And so again, June 28th is when I would be paying attention to what might be happening for like Taiwan and Turkey, because again, this might give us some ideas as what's to come. So another important transit to mention that already is kind of past us, because I'm recording this on June 3rd, but again, I did post some predictions back some weeks ago on my blog, is May 10th through June 2nd was actually a Mercury retrograde period. So at that time, we typically experience things like some delays in travel, or some errors or omissions in the reports. If there's a contract, oftentimes what happens, it's set on hold until some additional information is gathered. Maybe somebody needs to look into something, do like recalculations, or gather additional information. Or maybe if a contract is signed, then when Mercury turns direct, things then have to be evaluated and kind of reassessed. So Mercury retrograde is actually not always necessarily a bad time. It's actually time that's beneficial for things like reviewing previous contracts or paperwork, revising previously issued reports, reevaluating previous offers. So maybe if there's a negotiation, then this is a good time to kind of go over the previously filled paperwork and fill in any details or anything that maybe has been missed before. So, for example, if shipping is slow, it's actually a good idea to go through and see what exactly is preventing things from moving faster and address those issues at the time. And interestingly enough, right as Mercury turned retrograde, Tesla and SpaceX billionaire Elon Musk, he actually announced that his Twitter buyout is temporarily on hold because he wanted to do some more research into whether or not there are a lot of fake users or fake accounts, bots on Twitter. So it is exactly the type of activity, the example of an activity that you would expect to hear about under Mercury retrograde. So something like along the lines of putting a contract on hold, do additional research, looking for any missing details, reevaluating the offer, etc. And again, those Mercury retrograde is actually a good time for that. So also, as you can imagine, somebody that has it natally, which many people do, it means that those people, maybe in order for them to be convinced of something or before they sign a contract, they actually need to look through things really thoroughly, and they may not have an easy time to just jumping into, agreeing to something or buying something, that they would kind of look at things, look through things initially, make sure that things are clear, because if they don't do that, they're more likely than, I guess, person with Mercury direct to actually sign something that maybe has some omissions, or kind of do it in the odd, awkward timing. So just something that, if people become aware of that, they will just become a little bit more careful or more thorough in doing sort of their own review of any contracts, or of, evaluating things before they buy them. So that's actually a trait that, again, could be very valuable. So luckily yesterday on June 2nd, Mercury turned direct, so things should speed up. At this point, in terms of like retail sales, communication, transportation related projects. The only thing is that for now, at least for this month, Mercury will still remain and slowly kind of moving away from it, but it will still, at least the next couple of weeks, be in the square to Saturn. So even though it has turned direct, it will continue to experience this kind of a Saturnian sort of grip, where it will have to, things, even if they start kind of slowly becoming kind of better, maybe people can start communicating better, like the contracts may now continue to kind of move forward. Still, Saturn will make things kind of either slow or make things kind of require additional scrutiny. So even though, again, Mercury has turned direct as of now, as of 3rd of June when I'm recording this, it actually will still continue to be afflicted by Saturn, which means that, again, travel may resume, but things will not be quite as fast initially. However, it will actually improve when Mercury is going to change signs. The good news is that Mercury is actually going to enter Gemini, the sign that it rules, on June 13th. And that's when I think things will really pick up. So that will be a really good time actually for traveling, sales, going up, kind of communicating in groups. Things should really pick up speed at that point. Also good for businesses like related to IT, social media, retail sales, communication, transportation, and high tech. So if there are delayed shipments, delayed contracts, that's where I think things should really improve. For one, Mercury will be sort of moving away from that square with Saturn, and also Mercury in its own sign of Gemini is really going to be beneficial for any sort of Mercurian activities. So another time that sort of overlaps with that, brief influence, but nevertheless, if you're looking to sort of go out in a group or travel somewhere, that will be a fun time to do that. And that's June 10th through the 12th approximately, especially the 11th. And that's when Venus will conjunct Uranus in Taurus. Venus will, of course, be in its own sign of Taurus that it rules. So it will be kind of time where, if, say, somebody may be more likely to buy something, maybe an unusual, surprising gift, or receive something, some sort of unexpected bonus or unexpected fun, little, lottery win or something, not necessarily a large win, but something small, fun. So again, that will be a fun time for kind of surprising gifts, or to do something fun and enjoyable that person previously didn't necessarily do. And for the markets, at that time, again, June 10th through the 12th, especially the 11th, that's when I would expect some exciting or even surprising news related to things like crypto, aerospace, electric vehicles, fintech, IT, electricity, networks, cloud service providers, and things like that, like online retailers. At the same time, this is not going to be a negative influence. It's maybe more along the lines of something that's surprising, something unfolds in an unusual kind of takes an unusual turn. And again, that's right where Mercury is about to be entering Gemini. So I think there may be, if there's some decision that was previously on hold or unfolding slowly, that's when, right around that, say, 10th through the 13th of June, the decision may come through about, again, like some sort of a contract, a larger sale, or maybe if people were hesitating about buying something, that's when they're more likely to kind of spend money and spend even more like on an impulse. So, that will be a time if somebody is trying to sell something to approach, people say, here's a new phone and has these cool techy features, people will be more likely to buy it at that time. And again, this may also correlate with the news about, say, IT businesses and even electric vehicles. And again, the news could be surprising, but I think it will be more along the positive kind of lines, like a positive surprise, maybe higher than expected earnings, for example, or some surprising valuation or surprising deal may be reached. And also with influence of Taurus and Venus here and Uranus kind of combined, we will have increased news about things like banks, financial institutions, currencies, especially cryptocurrencies. And I think actually that the value of related businesses and profits from these areas may increase. And in fact, there may be really unexpected value fluctuations, like in some currency, for example, in like Bitcoin or Euro USD pair. So I think there might be, again, especially 10th through the 12th or so of June, there might be increased like a rally in, in say Bitcoin or something like that, or it could be some increased surprising news that are related to currency value. And again, I think it will be along the lines of like a spike or jump. And anything that tends to trend in a more volatile manner as it is, that's where you will likely see, again, some unexpected kind of rally, possibly followed, after the 12th or on the 12th by reversal. So let's see. So at the end of June and early July, as I mentioned, Mars will square Pluto. And this, unfortunately, is not a very sort of uplifting, happy influence. Oftentimes, just in generally, it's correlated with things like large earthquake, accidents, disasters, attacks, protests. There also may be increased tensions or push for some reforms. So Pluto symbolizes reforms, transformation, and likely they will be related to things that are related to all things Mars. So that would be police, military, weapons, sports. And basically it is going to be, again, time of protests. So if reforms or some changes are not made, there is a good chance of things kind of escalating where people are really unhappy and angry about it. Or of course, if the protest, I guess if the reforms are made, people still may be unhappy and angry about that either way. But at the very minimum, again, expect some tensions. And again, we also will be having a new moon on June 28th, and there will be several kind of transits at the same time that are expecting charts of Taiwan and Turkey. So for Taiwan, and I forgot to say, this will be a new moon in Cancer, so it's actually a influence that focuses on things to do with like homeland, food, farming, land, real estate, banks, assets, and of course women and children, and anything to do with like home, I don't know, things that people like to feel comfortable and cozy. So at that time is when there may be focus on those kind of either new projects in those areas, or these maybe protests or reforms may be related to that. Again, something that is upsetting, and the concern is about protecting homeland, protecting food safety, protecting women and children, and there may be some either calls for reforms and people are upset that reforms are not being implemented, or vice versa. There is a reform and people may be upset again that it is implemented. So either way, time of some tensions, but also time for some new beginnings, where if something, especially say, I don't know, real estate related or some new initiative that is implemented by banks, that's the time where we may hear about that is right around the 28th. Unfortunately, again, because of the Mars square Pluto at the same time, even though it's actually maybe a positive sort of development for, say, banks, whatever they may be coming up with, there may still be the feeling of kind of anger or things kind of not going well all at the same time. So it's kind of a mixed influence, I suppose. So for Taiwan, what's interesting is new moon on the 28th will actually precisely conjunct its sun. So what we will see in the sky will be sun and moon together, and it will also be conjuncting sun in the horoscope of Taiwan, and it will oppose its midheaven. So it will be basically on the nadir of Taiwan, which again emphasizes things like homeland, borders, security for agriculture, farming, food production, safety, etc. And unfortunately, with this transit of Mars squaring Pluto, things may, unfortunately, we will hear about some sort of shakeups, problems for leadership, or some protests, or again, could be a large earthquake right around the 28th. So for Taiwan, that may indeed manifest as either an earthquake, but again, I think things may also kind of get slightly kind of worse in early August and then in November. So at the very minimum, I expect that at the end of June, there may be like a preview, so to speak, of things that may be wrapping up in the upcoming months. So there may be for Taiwan announcements also about like international relations, status on the world arena, leadership, and things like that. But actually at this time, things are not looking so bad for Taiwan. So actually, if there are announcements about any international deals or relations, it actually is, I think, going to be along the lines of improved foreign relations for Taiwan at this time. So, and also for Taiwan at the same time, there may be increased news related to like water, navy, oil, gas, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, deceptive activities, secrets, and things that are related basically to Neptune. So as I mentioned, for example, if there's like an underwater volcano that's kind of, maybe, I don't know if there is one or there is not, off the coast of Taiwan, if there's some activity that is related to either water or gas or chemicals, that's where we may see some increase of news about that. And again, in the end of June, things don't look quite as bad. In fact, there will be support, either international support or some positive international deals may be made, say about shipping something long distance. But there may already starting some things that are not quite seen, or it's not going to be necessarily obvious just yet because, again, of the influence of Neptune there. So if there's like underwater volcano and there's like a slow moving or some sort of a smaller pre-shock or whatever, I would say this is the time to pay attention to that, because things may kind of get, unfortunately, worse, especially starting like in early August through November. So let's see. So definitely, like if there's like a mini tsunami, again, this might be the kind of activity that may kind of continue to kind of be in the news, and things may escalate in the upcoming months. So for Turkey, this new moon on the 28th of June will conjunct actually its ascendant, and it will square its Mars. At the same time, Jupiter will oppose Turkey's Mars, and Uranus will oppose its Venus. Which, by the way, Venus in the horoscope of Turkey sits only about 1 degree away from where it is in China's chart, which means that whatever the events, and there could be some surprising events related to finance or currency for Turkey around the 28th of June, this may give us again some idea or somewhat similar to what might come for China around the 1st of August. But generally speaking, this time of the end of June for Turkey may see news about things like drought, fires, military activities, accidents, and also some sudden upsetting events that again involve financial institutions, currencies. The value of currency may drastically change, or there may be some upsetting events related again to finance, banks, and of course Venus in the horoscope of Turkey doesn't sit in the exact same place as it is in the horoscope of China in terms of like where it is in the houses, but it is in about the same 1 degree away. So definitely again a preview of what's happening for Turkey may give us some hint about some sort of financial disruptions or some sort of financial or currency related surprises or policies that may occur in China around the 1st of August. So I'm not sure that these countries are related anyway, what might be happening in Turkey and Taiwan sort of at the same time. The only trend that I previously noticed is that, again, in 1999, both countries had really supermassive earthquakes, and that occurred within like a month of one another, like in August and September, I believe. And those both were like 7 point plus something in magnitude and really were quite devastating. But in both of charts of both of these countries from late June through mid-November of 2022, there are these kind of important transits that are going through, and they're going to be happening to their charts, and they're similar to Again, time in 1999 and even in 1935 for Taiwan as well, where there are some really massive earthquakes. So it could be some natural disaster, or it could be something just, again, some shakeup, but something that I would say definitely, if one is in the earthquake prone zone, definitely I would say this is the time to be maybe having like a bag or something, be prepared at that time. Let's see. Or it could be, of course, any kind of accident, especially around the 1st of August, kind of looking further into the future, that may be like a power outage and blackout. Maybe it's related just to droughts and fires, or, you know, solar flare, who knows, I'm totally speculating here. Or it could be, if there is indeed an earthquake, definitely something could trigger, you know, blackout. But again, late June, look for the first signs of any bank-related problems for, say, Turkey. Beginning some financial reforms, again, that's for Turkey, or for both Turkey and Taiwan, any sort of shakeups that may be indicative of increased like seismic activity. But this will continue, these kind of events or tensions that may begin in early June, they may actually continue and even peak right around maybe in November of this year, as well as around the 1st of August. There might be another time where things may also see either an escalation or a probability of like a large earthquake also peaks. That's globally, but for some reason I keep focusing on Taiwan and Turkey just because it seemed to be affecting their charts more than some other places. But other possibilities for these, again, two countries, starting from, again, end of June through November, mid-November, but again, peaking end of June, peaking around August 1st, and peaking in early to mid-November are things like industrial accident, plane crash, some airline experiencing problems, spike in militarized activities, and of course right around November 8th we will also have, or right, I guess on November 8th we'll have a total lunar eclipse. And that also is going to be a difficult time. So there might be multiple sort of events that just kind of, they start maybe at the end of June and they continue through mid-November, but it's just something that maybe looks like it's a tied up sort of event, or events that are tied to each other and they kind of continue on. And maybe these two countries things will be happening independently, but I'm not sure. Maybe there will be some connection as well. So as I mentioned, past events, specifically for Taiwan and Turkey, is when they had the Izmit earthquake in August of 1999, and it was like 7.6 massive earthquake, and in Taiwan 7.7 happened to be in September of 1999. And so unfortunately, this is definitely one possibility that something may happen. And what we'll have on August 1st is where we will have, and also it will continue through, you know, in the fall, we will have basically Uranus near north node of the moon. And typically when you have slow planets near the north or south node of the moon is when there are really massive earthquakes or massive developments, typically difficult ones, especially if it's near the south node of the moon. So for example, in 1935, there was a really massive earthquake again in Taiwan, and very deadly one, and at that time I had Pluto conjuncting south node of the moon. So this time it will be Uranus near north node of the moon in Taurus, so it could be along the lines of like sudden problems for banks, for financial sector, some fluctuations in the currency value, or some other financial shakeups. Or it could be, again, related to things like electricity, power outages, etc. And again, this exact conjunction between Mars, Uranus, and North Node, I have that covered in a separate video, and that will be on the 1st of August, but things will start kind of revealing themselves, or there's a preview of something to happen around the 28th of June. So definitely something to kind of keep paying attention for, especially for Turkey. Things may be related to finance more, but for both of those countries, some probability of shakeups, earthquakes, etc. is what I see going up. So as I mentioned, early August is going to be a difficult time both globally and for these two countries, but for Taiwan, what's relevant is that in the early August 2022, Jupiter will actually square Taiwan's midheaven nadir axis. So at that time, yet again, there may be increased focus on leadership, status of Taiwan in the world arena, homeland, food security, as well as real estate or buildings, land itself. Again, if there is, say, an earthquake and shakeup and there is a major tsunami, obviously that would interrupt or interfere with many of these activities. But again, this just kind of already early August kind of looks difficult globally, but also for Taiwan. Yet again, there's an increased focus from Jupiter. Definitely can either escalate things or can bring the attention of like bring attention on international relations. So let's see, but the entire time from basically later in this month through mid-November for Taiwan and for Turkey also looks ripe for either a notable earthquake, some other kind of disaster, and for Taiwan it may involve tsunami. There's a focus on some Neptunian activity there, and not for Turkey, it's more focus on like financial kind of activities. And worldwide, on things like power outages, earthquakes, and just some difficult events. And so for Turkey in the early August, Jupiter is going to oppose its Mars, while Uranus will oppose its Venus. So again, these transits are indicative for Turkey of concerns about things like drought, fires, military activities, accidents, and sudden upsetting events that may involve financial institutions and currency. For globally and for US, again, this end of June through early July is a difficult time, just because, again, Mars in Aries will square Pluto in Capricorn. So there might be increased news about violent attacks, anti-governmental protests, accidents involving fires and structural damage, stronger than usual earthquakes, and just problems for leaders who are old or inflexible. So maybe a leader of some established corporation steps aside or they're replaced. And Aries is associated with things like military and sports, also fast action taking, risks. And Capricorn has the energy of like large corporations, government, something that's stable, has this defined structure, limitations, discipline, controls. So when these two planets square each other, and especially Mars is in its own sign of rulership, where it's actually extra strong, definitely we can expect some disagreements that involve either issues like military, police, weapons, leaders that are, again, old and flexible and are not willing to change, or definitely, again, people may be protesting rather, either against the reforms or for reforms. But either way, there will be some disagreement about the related issues that I just mentioned, and there will be push for making some changes there. So maybe there's a coach that everybody hates, and there will be this, big uprising to make sure that this, athletic coach is replaced, or there may be some sort of disagreement between, say, two coaches. Like one of them has this conservative attitude and they kind of want to play things safe, but then another coach really is looking to take on more aggressive, assertive kind of approach. And so there might be this disagreement about, okay, should we exercise caution, discipline, proceed slowly, or should we take on risks? Or like I said, if somebody is doing some extreme sports, end of June through early July is probably not the good time to do that, not the best time to, start anything that isn't involved being like at the top of a mountain, like skiing, or I don't know, something where people do this paragliding or whatever it is, where things may suddenly go down. That is the time to kind of avoid such activities. Also, Pluto is going to be retrograde at the time, so Mars, energies can quote-unquote win. So that would be favoring if there's, like I said, the coaches that are perhaps in disagreement, or maybe they're military leaders who are also in disagreement. Should there be like a faster, riskier, more aggressive, full speed ahead approach, or this cautious kind of let's wait and see, or let's do things the old way. So at this time, the more assertive, more kind of risky approach can win, but again, it doesn't mean that everybody, should follow along. Just kind of pay attention, avoid like people who are just kind of doing the road rage, kind of upsetting type of situations. So there may also be news involving athletes, especially related to fighting, racing, or people who are involved in like extreme sports. And those kind of people, if they decide and go ahead and do risky things, unfortunately, we may hear about accidents like, motorcycle accidents, like some famous athlete or a famous person, sustaining some, injuries like in a car crash because of the excessive speed, for example. Pluto also rules things like I said, police, also nuclear power, nuclear weapons, power plants in general, recycling, prisons. So there may be things like, prison riots or concerns about maybe some nuclear waste overheating. Again, this could be due to an earthquake, or just, again, there's a drought and fire comes too close to where something is stored. And Pluto being in Capricorn rules things like tall buildings, mountains, large corporations, government, etc. So this could be, again, maybe a government facility or facility that is somewhere at the top of the mountain, or in something in the soil, or maybe there's a mine. Pluto has to do with mines also, so this could be another accident in the mine, for example. That's all end of June, early July. So definitely, again, extra safety measures should, I would say, taken if there's concerns about like somebody is involved in mining, if there's concerns about any leak or anything like that. That's the time to definitely take them seriously and to not, sort of estimate the seriousness of the situation. So as I said before, June 28th is actually a new moon in Cancer, and with the moon kind of moving away from that new moon, Mars, Pluto, and Moon will actually form a T-square on the 30th of June, which is going to potentially emphasize the potency of this square. So definitely things may escalate both on the 28th when there's actually a new moon, and on the 30th when Moon, Mars, and Pluto will be in a T-square. So again, as I mentioned, there could be like a mining accident, fiery explosion, something that causes structural damage, anti-governmental protests, or established corporation announcing like large layoffs or restructuring, a plane crash, notable accident, large earthquake, or some other major disaster. At the same time, since of course Pluto is hovering over where Pluto is in the horoscope of the US, meaning that US is experiencing an ongoing Pluto return, it means that this Mars-Pluto square that's happening kind of for everybody is also going to be especially affecting Pluto in the US chart. And Pluto there sits in the second house. That has to do with things like finance, banks, earnings, currency, and things like that. And so definitely at that time, expect large market moves, potentially some upsetting announcements related to, again, finance, earnings, real estate, currency, and especially around the 28th through the 30th, plus minus a few days. But again, 28th and 30th specifically, they kind of look significant to me. So potentially there may be like a major drop on the 28th and 28th through the 29th. Then, I think there might be potentially an up move on the 28th and 29th of June, and then a reversal to down on the 30th. And the drop on the 30th, I think, may be triggered by things like concerns about US earnings, banks, currency, and so forth. Maybe like a shakeup in leadership, an upsetting change involving financial policies, an aggressive move to deal with debt, risky move to improve earnings, an aggressive, upsetting financial policy that affects real estate possibly negatively. So definitely large moves, I think, again, up on the 28th through 29th and potentially reversal down on the 30th. But either way, I think both because we have Mars square Pluto at the time, Mars squaring Pluto in the US chart of, second house of banks, currencies. And at the same time, we're also going to be, there's going to be a new moon, which typically also triggers larger than usual market moves. Definitely a few difficult days towards the end of June and early July. However, again, this could be just a preview of what might still to come in early August, late July, maybe as early as July 25th through August 13th, but right around August 1st, plus minus a few days. So at that time, and I have a separate video about that, but this might be one of the worst times of the year, really, both in terms of probability of like a blackout, major airline accident, major earthquakes in earthquake-prone zones, and specifically charts of Taiwan and Turkey pop up. But again, late June is significant because we may see a preview of what might still to come, both globally and again for Turkey and Taiwan in particular. So until then, hope you enjoyed this and stay safe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.